Hello, I'm Irene. You're watching Perpetually Paperback, and today I'm going to be doing my best and worst of the year so far. Hello, everyone. Thank you for being here. I'm Irene. It's been a while, but I thought this would be a great time to kind of fill you in on what I've been reading this past year. I think it's actually been if I'm being honest, it's probably been like a solid 3, just because we've had some really good and then some that have been not so good. All of the kind of middle of the road has been about the same for me. There's not really been a change. But today I want to talk about the ones I've loved so far and the ones that haven't quite lived up to my expectations. So I'm basically going to go in order of the books that I really liked, kind of starting from the beginning and we'll come up to the present basically. But the first book that I read that I really, really loved was Age of Vice by Deepti Kapoor. And this is basically like the underbelly of this region in India, and this one in particular is Uttar Pradesh. But it starts off with Ajay, and he's just this poor boy from the slums, and it's kind of following his story as he becomes woven into this family that is a crime syndicate. It was a massive book. I blew through it. It was just so well written for me. The only caveat I would say to this is that it definitely felt like a first part, and I think it is either a duology or a trilogy, something like that. So I'm going to be anxiously awaiting any further installments because it was just so good. It basically followed these 3 characters and how their lives are woven and shaped by this crime syndicate. It was just fabulous. Maybe it was also something that it's something I don't read a whole lot of. So for me, I found it really, really interesting. It started the year off with a bang. I had read a couple books before that, but not anything with this type of... it was well written. It was interesting. It was very non-linear, so it kind of kept going back and forth and following different characters. The main 3, ultimately, but you got each character's perspective, and everything unfolded more and more and more and more. And finally, at the end, the way it ended made a whole lot of sense. And it could be easily written, or read as, I believe, a standalone. I read it as a standalone, ultimately, thinking it was. You could easily read it. There is an end. It ends. I just want more. So hopefully there are more. The next book I read that I found truly magnificent was Barbara Kingsolver's Demon Copperhead. I don't really have anything to add here. I don't have anything special. She's won multiple awards. Many, many people have thought this is a good book. If anyone doesn't know, it is a David Copperfield retelling, which I actually haven't read I haven't read David Copperfield. It didn't make any difference. This book it follows a boy named Demon. And his name's actually Damon, but everyone calls him Demon. And it's set in just the backwoods of Appalachia, where the drug companies, they made it a point to target those areas leading into the opioid epidemic. It was just... I will say with this one, it was sad on top of sad on top of sad. And then just when you think there's going to be room for air, nope, sadder again. But honestly, Barbara Kingsolver is just an incredible writer. And I was gripped from the absolute beginning. I would go to bed thinking about what was going to happen next. I am not going to share any thoughts about it as far as where I stand. Obviously, I loved it. I will, however, say for anyone that has read it, I literally yelled at the end, and she could have written another 1,000 pages. I would have been just fine. I loved it. But again, so apparently did everyone else. After that, what else notable did I have? Those were honestly the 2 standouts, I would say, of the year so far. I think those are going to make my top 10 at the end of the year, because they were just... few things have come close to touching them. Another one, though, that I had on my list I just had on my radar for a long time, and I didn't realize it was quite so small of a piece, but it was Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. I looked at all the Booker Prize nominees from last year and just I like to pull out the things that sound interesting to me. She's an Irish writer, And it was the perspective, if anyone knows what the Magdalen laundries are, it's where these women in Ireland that would have been, they either would have had babies out of wedlock, or they were in different type of situations that would have left them either out on the street or in like a workhouse type situation. They were shunned by their families or kicked out or different things like that. So they were put into these like convent type situations, but they were laundries, and it was, they were like state mandated. So that's essentially what it is somewhat about, but the way that she tells the story is in a very real way, through the perspective of a man who lives in this town and his experiences with this situation. It was not at all what I expected. It was such a quick read, and it was beautiful. She could have written so much more, but I think there is beauty in something so concise. She didn't use a single word that she didn't need, and it said everything. Sometimes I think what's amazing is the things you don't say, and Claire Keegan really illustrates that. Her words are beautiful. Her prose is beautiful. It was a lovely story. I picked up Foster by her, and that is my next read. But yeah, actually, I just have the jacket. I think I lent it. But Small Things Like These by Claire Keegan. And look at it. You can see it's like a little bit of nothing. It was great. Beautiful. So she's definitely going to be someone that I'm looking for going forward. Let me just see what else I read. Oh, okay, this one definitely is not quite as high as any of the others, but I really enjoyed it. It was The Last Russian Doll by Kristen Loesch, yes. It is a dual storyline with a younger girl, kind of in the 90s, and she's working as a translator for this Russian scholar. And it is a parallel storyline with her, I don't want to say her mother, but this other woman, because I actually honestly don't even remember if it was her mother. But this other person who is kind of giving us the perspective of everything that's taking place in Russia during the Bolshevik Revolution, which for me was actually something that I had not read a whole lot of. It was an interesting perspective. They talk a lot about what Russia was like under Gorbachev, and then before that Lenin, and obviously Stalin with the Bolshevik Revolution. It was an interesting perspective across the board. It was something I hadn't heard. I really enjoyed it. Also, I just really like for whatever reason, I don't know why, but I've just always been attracted to like Russian stories, Russian folklore. It's just interesting to me. I feel like there's a little bit of a magical realism aspect to it, but also really woven into their religion and everything like that. I don't know. I've always found it particularly interesting. So for me, that was a standout. Not as high as the other, the Age of Vice or Demon Copperhead. Those by far were just outstanding. What else did I read? Ooh. Okay, so I think the last book that I actually would say that I would add to this is, I read Love and Saffron by Kim Fay? And that was just a very cute story. That was on the suggestion of Joel and Greg from Supposedly Fun. Both of them read it, and it was absolutely lovely. It was very cute. It's a story between two women. It's an epistolary novel, so it's letters written to each other. These two women who become friends and share their lives together, and cooking and recipes, and it was just so heartwarming and lovely. And it is very sad at the end, so be aware. Don't maybe read it on the plane, but super cute. The only other one I want to mention that I would say is just generally one of the top of the year was Damon Galgut's The Promise. This one I had on my radar for a couple years now. Well, I don't know if a couple years, but I think it won the Booker Prize last year. Yeah, exactly. So won the year before. I believe last year, but it's a story set in South Africa. And I actually haven't said this year, but I'm working on a project to read a book taking place at least in every country in the world. So this was my South Africa pick. South African writer. It follows a family on, I don't remember if it's the eve or like the day of the death, but essentially following a death where a promise was made to a maid in the family. And the story basically follows each member in the family and what takes place and what consequences they've had in their life based on what was based on the repercussions of the promise. And it dealt with apartheid a bit, which, again, I don't read a lot of South African literature. I would like to read more. So for me, it was, not only was it well written, it was an interesting perspective of something that I don't know a lot about, or really anything, honestly. It spanned many decades to the point where apartheid is then over. And that's just a different perspective as well. I thought it was really well written. It's a book that's going to stick with me. The only thing I would say is that it took me a while to get into, just because it took me a minute to kind of get the way that they talk. It's just different from how I talk, so it just took me a second to like get that voice in my mind. But loved it, so good. Huge family saga. Not a very long book for a sweeping saga, but I would say it definitely was. Both male and female perspectives throughout different times, different places in South Africa, and each of the siblings has such a different perspective, and I quite enjoyed it. So I definitely recommend you check that out if that's something that you're interested in. Now I'm going to move on to the ones that I found. I haven't hated anything this year, or at least not yet. I think I've read 45 books, I want to say. No, almost 50, 49. So I've read 49 books so far. Some of them I think have been rereads. I don't really pay too much attention as to what has been read. If I don't remember it, it's going to be read again. That would be just like historical romances, things like that. Today, I'm going to talk about the ones I didn't like. And actually, I'm going to say the very first book of the year that I read was A Dangerous Business by Jane Smiley. It was set in Monterey, California, and it was so unmemorable. It was so just blah. I was bored. I think it dealt with like hookers in Monterey, or like a brothel of some kind. It was like, but like also set in, like when they had like the Cannery Row, like maybe like the 60s, I think. No, even earlier than that. It was like the 40s or something like that. I don't know. It was just very and then at the end of it, it was just like nothing happened. It was just very unmemorable. After that, I read a bunch of historical romance. All that was fine. Ooh, The Last Tale of the Flower Bride by Roshani Chokshi. This is, I can't decide if I didn't like it because it's YA fantasy and I don't read a lot of that, or if it just wasn't good. I kind of think it just wasn't good because I've read enough YA fantasy that I've enjoyed to not say that, I think. So I'm just going to go with it wasn't very good. It was a fairy tale based story having to do with this house and keys, and again, I don't know if it was the timing or I just wasn't into it. I probably should have DNF'd this one a quarter of the way through because it just never got better and it was all the same. I didn't care about any of the characters. At some point it was like kind of confusing as far as what to do with this house and like where the gods are and the underworld and like the two girls. It was just, that one was just not for me. So, moving on from that, there's actually only two others that I want to talk about that I just was very unhappy with. One of them is, I thought I had it around here, but it's Carola Lovering's Too Good to Be True. Marital drama. That's all you need to know. Marital drama. It was like a love triangle kind of situation. Ended so freaking stupid. So stupid. It basically follows... I literally don't even fucking remember. I think someone was trying to frame someone else. At the end of the day, someone's like making up a story of who they are. It didn't matter, and literally it was one of those things that like any situation could have been like a strong red flag if the character had been like slightly smarter about it. It just wasn't good. It wasn't good. It wasn't good. Even if you like domestic dramas, this had very little drama, very little domestic. It just felt like three people waiting in the wind, and just, I don't care. I don't care. I don't think I'm someone that just likes domestic drama. There is some, okay? Oh, that's what it was. Okay, okay, okay. So it's like a husband and wife that's like trying to play this rich girl and like how they're all interconnected, and it wasn't clever. It wasn't surprising. You could pretty much pick up on where it was going pretty early on. And finally, when we got there, it ended gross. At least for me. I wasn't super happy with the ending. It didn't feel, it just felt gross. Finally, the last one that I wasn't super into was Simone St. James, The Sundown Motel. I was actually very surprised about this one. I've read all her others so far. My friend and I actually both read them together. We really enjoyed all the others. This one felt a little too ghost, not enough thriller, and the main character, like the person we're following. So I think in the others, the person that we were following was at least endearing in a way. This one didn't have anything endearing. She was just annoying. And the ghost aspect felt very gimmicky, where it hasn't, like the others felt more like a suspenseful thriller. This one had just a very like Freddy Krueger, like, I don't know, it was just stupid. Or at least I don't have any problem with ghosts. I in her others, there's the supernatural elements that I found legitimately scary or chilling, or I don't know, something. This one was just like stupid. It wasn't scary at all. It was just ridiculous. And the reasons that each of the characters had for why they were doing the things just were very surface level, ultimately. And then I actually struggled to get through this one. I probably would have, this one I almost DNF'd had I not been reading it with a friend, because anytime I'm doing something like that, I'm going to give it the respect it deserves just based off of that. But yeah, neither of us were really caring for this one, which is concerning. I really liked her stuff. Yeah. That's pretty much it. That's all I've got for you guys today. Those are my best and worst of the year so far. I don't know how often I'll be back, but I think for sure at the end of the year I'll do my best and worst. If not, I'll have some videos in between. I do want to talk about some series that I've been reading that I've been enjoying. I've had a mystery series that's been fantastic and a couple romance series that I really enjoyed. So stay tuned for those. Otherwise, thanks for being here, guys. I'll see you next time. Bye.